Welcome to Dr Joe Unplugged. This podcast contains general information and is not in any way medical advice. Can pet ownership ward off dementia, also known as cognitive decline? Most people like animals, and a lot of us have a pet, and it has been shown that aside from the enjoyment that a pet brings to our lives, there are assortment of health benefits, and that often includes that people are fitter, especially if they have a dog, because guess what? Most dogs need walking, and even if you weren't inclined to go for a walk yourself, if you got the dog, you probably will do, maybe a bit less so with cats or pet birds. But yes, people who have pets may tend to be healthier. Now, some new work. Quote, pet ownership is associated with slower cognitive decline, which is, again, loss of mental faculties. In seniors who live alone, a new longitudinal cohort study has shown. Investigators note the findings are important because previous research suggests that older adults who live alone are at higher risk of dementia, end quote. So they've studied data on just under 8,000 people aged 50 or more, 56% female, mean age of 66, and this is from England. Every 2 years for the next 8 years after baseline, participants were assessed for verbal cognition, so that's understanding what's said, verbal memory, fluency, information about covariates, including age, sex, employment status were collected. So they've got a lot of demographic data, which they always do in these studies. But essentially, in simplest terms, they're measuring their cognitive ability, which is an indicator of are these people on the road towards dementia. 35% of the participants were pet owners and 27% lived alone. So essentially what they found, as we said at the top, was that those who did own the pets had a lower rate of cognitive decline. Now, once again, the exact reasons have not been determined, as is often the case. And one has to be a little bit wary about what we call associative studies. And when you see in the newspapers or online A linked with B or A associated with B, it can just be that the two things have been found at the same time, and it certainly does not always mean cause and effect. But when we think about it, we do know that people who live alone, and this has been shown before, may be more at risk of dementia. Partly that is because of loneliness, partly because they may not eat as well, partly because they may not do as much exercise. There's a whole cluster of factors there. What does having a pet do? Apart from anything else, most people talk to their pets. You may not get a lot of answer back, at least not verbally, but, you do get response. And also, as we said before, particularly with dogs, they get walked. You also have a degree of responsibility when you have a pet. So that tends to keep you a little bit more on your toes. So you might be just that little bit more inclined to think about how you're looking after yourself because you have a responsibility to look after the animal. Maybe it is because you're also reading about aspects or matters to do with the pet. Again, we haven't got an exact causative mechanism. What's the take home out of all of this, though? Does it mean if you don't particularly want to have a pet or are not a situation to do so, you should go out and get one? Probably not. If though, it has been shown that there are benefits to having pets, then that is a useful thing because increasingly we find different local governments wanting to make it harder and harder for people to keep animals, which I think is an absolute disgrace. So are there good reasons to have a pet? The main one is that you enjoy them and that you can love them and they can provide unconditional love. And again, whether that's, whatever sort of pet you've got, I think probably cats and dogs are most popular, but some people have, rodents, they have mice, people can have hermit crabs, some people have birds. Birds probably, personal opinion, really should be flying around. I don't think birds really belong in cages, but look, that's, again, that's my opinion. But I think what this does say to us and reinforces what has been shown is that human beings do well in, if you like, in collaboration with or in association with animals. And this work really just adds to what we already know. So for those of you out there who've got a pet and are enjoying it, great. Doesn't mean that you can never get dementia. Of course, it doesn't mean that. Is it just one more thing that you're doing that could be beneficial? Yes, it is. For those of you who haven't got a pet and have been thinking about it, again, just on this study alone, I don't think that of itself is the reason to go out and do it, but it could be one more into the consideration. And certainly for people who are lonely, there's a lot of additional benefits there in terms of company. And if you have family members or people that you know who might be lonely or living alone, and this was one of the key takeouts from this study, then look, it might be something to suggest to them or encourage them to do. Once again, assuming that they're in a position to do so and it's appropriate for them. So, animals are great. Provide a lot of joy and enjoyment for humans. We need to look after them. We need to be responsible for them. We need to do our best for them. And in turn, we get a lot of benefits as well. Thanks for listening to Dr. Joe Unplugged. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also follow it on all the socials. There'll be new content uploaded each week.